This is Chris Oatley's ArtCast, episode 82, an interview with Adam Westbrook, creator of the Delve video essays. Part 2. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Chris Oatley's ArtCast, the show that goes inside the hearts and minds of successful professional artists. I'm Chris Oatley. I was a visual development artist at Disney before I quit to start my own online art school, the Oatley Academy of Concept Art and Illustration. Find more art instruction and career advice from some of the most inspiring voices in animation, games, comics, and new media at chrisoatley.com. In part 1 of this interview, Adam told the story of how he left his career as a radio journalist, moved from England to Paris, and created Delve.tv, an ongoing series of short, snappy documentaries that challenge creative people to deepen their understanding of craft and culture. Now, in part 2, we'll talk about becoming a lifetime learner, the storyteller's responsibility, and how social media can confuse your creative process. After the interview, I'll introduce a new segment called the Oatley Academy Student Spotlight, where you'll meet Jessica Dahl and Reggie Rock in a fiery discussion about the power of visual storytelling. And be sure to visit chrisoatley.com/delve2, that's DELVE and the number 2, and join the conversation in the comments after the show. So tell us about the birth of yet another universe, the universe of the Delve project.
Absolutely. Well, it certainly, in terms of its gaseous stage, as I say, it lasted about 8 years before it started to solidify into something real. Yeah, it was, I think, like all good things, it was all creative things. It was, an assimilation of lots of different ideas from different external sources. As I say, a big one was my sort of deep interest in narrative and story design, but also in visual storytelling as well. That's another whole area that, to me, is still, even though video is my medium, still feels like a huge mystery, you know? A box of black magic and how juxtaposition works and all those type of things. And so for me, again, a lot of it is trying to figure out answers to that. So there was that kind of side to it. So I knew I wanted to put these kind of story design workflows and practices into practice, and I kind of needed a project. And it's funny, I could have just come up with anything really and picked any subject to do a story. There's just obviously an infinite number of stories out there to do. But it was about, as I said earlier, trying to solidify, trying to constrain myself, rather, trying to find a constraint, a purpose, or an actual defined mission that would direct for me what the next videos might be, rather than having to start from scratch every time. And I found, through those early days as an unexpected university lecturer, and then through blogging, helping other people to understand journalism through writing about it, and then through trying to learn storytelling and share what I know with others, I've realized that I am really interested in education and learning. And I think, it's kind of well accepted these days that education in schools, at least, or in universities, needs a radical change to be in any way relevant for the 21st century. But I also found that, when I think back at my university days, I kind of wasted them a lot. Like, I got drunk, obviously, and went to parties and did lots of social things, spent lots of time making radio and doing student films, but I really lost my interest in learning. I studied history, and I hardly, I turned up to lectures, but I really wasn't excited to be there. And it's only in the last couple of years that I really started to rediscover a joy in learning for the sake of learning. With no actual tangible benefit, no real, just doing it because, you have this brain that with like a muscle, and if you don't actually use it, I think an interesting quote I remember. I think it's actually from Robert Greene, who wrote the book Mastery that I featured in the Da Vinci series. Yeah. He has a line, I think, in that same book, which is, you get the brain you deserve through your actions in life. So, if you're going to spend your time watching, soap operas and bad cop dramas and playing Candy Crush Saga, then you will get the brain that you deserve from that. But if you take your brain to the gym almost, if you kind of read difficult things and try and understand difficult ideas and try and learn things for the sake of learning them, you can build a brain in the same way that you can build a muscle. And for me, I started to realize that I didn't want to sort of waste my brain through my life. And I realized there's just so many gaps in my own understanding of how the world works. I don't really understand who came first, the Romans or the Greeks, and were they around at the same time, and all those kind of Greek myths, when did they happen, and are they real, and all that whole ancient history, for example, is one of those areas where, despite going through a really good education system, I know nothing about. And I realized that I want to learn those things. Yeah. So I sort of started to realize I maybe wanted to build something for other people who just wanted to learn, just for the sake of learning, just because it was interesting and it made them feel good about themselves to learn something new. That's kind of where it sort of started to sort of come from. In the end, I think, there are two problems it's trying to solve, I think, if I think of it as a problem-solving exercise. One is the thing we've talked a lot about, how do we use storytelling and good visual storytelling to make even the most complex ideas accessible and interesting. That's kind of problem number one. Yeah. And then problem number two, which is a whole different kettle of fish, is how do we get that information in front of people in a way that will be most engaging and useful for them. So, one of the challenges, obviously, as I'm sure you know, is this idea of the challenges of publishing on the internet, when people are just clicking through social media and scrolling up, at 60 miles an hour with their thumb on their phone. And I wonder whether we're getting it slightly wrong, actually, when we talk about, you hear people talk about short attention spans quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And, and we're in a world where somehow our attention has shrunk. And I think that is partly true. It is certainly harder to concentrate on things than it was. Yeah. But also at the same time, Steven Spielberg doesn't worry about short attention spans.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the answer, or the reason for that at least, is that because, when people go, to see his film, they are in the right frame of mind to consume a 2-hour film. 3-hour film from Steven Spielberg. They've paid the money, they've got the popcorn, they've seen the posters, they're in the dark room, they're in the comfy chairs. And if he tried to do anything else, if he tried to approach it like a YouTuber and try and make a 3-minute, cram, Lincoln into 3 minutes, people would be really disappointed and annoyed. So it sort of feels like, I'm worried a little bit, but so much of the energy at the moment in making stuff online is about trying to make it shorter or faster or
shallow.
Yeah, exactly. So that it will be more shared. And I wonder whether actually what we should be doing is still trying to make really good, deep, meaningful, intelligent, or whatever stuff, but trying to help people find the right place in their day, in their life, to consume it, to sit down and consume it. And as I said, it's a whole separate problem that I haven't even begun to sort of start to think about properly with Delve yet. But that is one of the things I'd like to try and figure out is, it's not, the way I'm doing it now isn't the ideal way, just to kind of put a video on YouTube and Vimeo and let people discover it. I eventually want to try and make it into an experience where people are anticipating it. And so they're setting the time aside to consume it. And maybe then to go and read a book off the back of it, or that type of thing. Yeah,
that's fantastic. This is something that from the very earliest days of my podcast 6 years ago, I made this decision at the very beginning of my podcast 6 years ago. There weren't very many things that were clear to me, but one of the things that was crystal clear was that I am not going to enable the lowest common denominator, the laziest parts of our lizard brain. I'm not going to do it. I love words. I love language, and word choice is important to me. And if I use a word that's more than one or two syllables, it's for a reason. It's because that was the word that was needed. That was the precise word that was needed to communicate the specific nuanced idea that I was trying to communicate. Most of the time, that's what's going on in my brain, at least. And I would have, there's all this sort of conventional wisdom, quote unquote, about, again, like you're saying, about how to communicate to people through podcasting or blogs, is that you don't use $5 words. You don't do it because you'll just turn people away. And I'm like, no, I want to attract the kind of people who who are fed up with being pandered to. Absolutely.
And I think it's rather than trying to, as you say, sort of go for the lowest common denominator and to appeal to the most people. I think it is about making something that you hold up to. And then I think that's one of the great things about the internet age and publishing in the internet age, is that it affords us this opportunity to make something that is the best that we can personally make as an artist. Yeah. And then build an audience who come for that and not for any other reason.
Right. Good still wins.
I think, I agree. It's the long roads, Yeah. As the essays sort of allude to, it is, because it takes it's a lot faster and cheaper and easier to figure out the tactics to make your stuff
go viral.
And it's a lot harder to spend the 15, 20 years or however long it might be to get so good at what you do that people are attracted to your work because that's what they really appreciate. And I say, you said it earlier, there are no cats in these essays for a reason. Like, I am intentionally trying to avoid using any type of populist thing, or trying to hide. In fact, it's not even that. It's trying to hide. I think there's a lot of stuff online where people hide behind irony. I think people try and be funny or ironic to avoid being sincere and vulnerable. And you can spot it a lot of the time, I think. I think people avoid saying the things that need to be said or trying to say the things that are difficult to say. They'd rather try and say things that, ironic or whatever. And I'm trying as hard as I can, because sometimes you do think, well, maybe humor is going to be the best way to convey this idea.
Sure, yeah.
And sometimes it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. The most compelling comedians, and I don't think this is just my opinion. I think this is kind of it's at least a shared American opinion. I don't know about the rest of the world, but a comedian like Louis C.K., he's doing way more than just being a clown, than just being a goofball. Yeah, in fact, my wife and I were watching this video where he was on the Conan O'Brien show, and he was talking about why he has not bought cell phones for his kids and why he doesn't want his kids to have cell phones. Basically, he was in his car driving. He was listening to a Bruce Springsteen song. And he said Bruce Springsteen was like shouting and he sounded far away. He had this reverb and everything. And he was like, did this kind of moan on the song. And it made Louis feel really sad. And he said that immediately he went to go send a text message to somebody or check Twitter or something to just kind of quickly try and make himself feel better. And then he just went, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to stay in the sadness.
And embrace the sadness.
Yeah, he pulled the car over and he said he just started crying. And then he said, and he was like going through all the stuff of like, man, I'm an idiot. What am I doing? Why am I subjecting myself to this, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, but then he goes, your body has like emotional antibodies. He goes, then as I released the sadness, like happiness started to come in. And he goes, and then I realized that because we can always just connect and just fix something in a shallow, brief way so quickly, we're never fully happy and we're never fully sad. He goes, you're just mildly satisfied with your product and then you die. It was funny, and it was at times edgy, as is expected from him on an aesthetic or a surface level. But it is so, as is all of his comedy, pretty much, it is so poignant and so disarming. In fact, and relentlessly disarming. He just he just holds you in this uncomfortable space. And Angie and I were at dinner last week with our friend who is a very good professional comedian, and we were talking about these same kind of ideas about how artists storytellers specifically and comedians are some of the only people, sometimes songwriters depending, but they're some of the only people who the culture has given full permission to teach me, call me out, make me uncomfortable. Like I will actually, and I won't just allow that, I will give you money and I will come back for more. And so few people are allowed to do that anymore. You know, it's called being preachy or whatever. But here, Louis C.K. is making us completely reevaluate the digital age. I mean, our entire connected, impatient, anesthetized culture.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think, you know, even though we live in the age of connection, I think the real challenge to us all now is to really make connections that mean something. And how easy is it, you know, to live a really shallow, unconnected life a lot of the time. And I don't think everyone's a fan of CK just because he's funny.
Right.
I mean, he's extremely funny, but I think you're right. I think his other famous kind of Conan O'Brien one from several years ago was when he talks about Wi-Fi on planes.
Yeah, right.
And which is great, but it's, you know, I think he also says the things.
Yeah.
That we kind of know to be true and no one else is saying. I think, you know, it's a huge challenge to us as artists and the generation of artists coming up behind us. I think you know, there isn't really anyone out there in any field of art or communication who is really saying the things that probably need to be said. You know, society is changing in a way. It has a speed and a pace at which it has never changed before. And none of us know how the hell we're supposed to cope with it or deal with it. And the media certainly doesn't. I think the mainstream media. And so it's sort of just reflecting our opinions back at ourselves and not really driving us forward in any way. But I think, you know, it seems like for a long time there hasn't really been an artist or a group of artists in any kind of field who are, you know, really being radical, if you like, not radical in a political sense, but you know, saying something that makes us all uncomfortable and forces us to question ourselves in a big way.
I was on the phone yesterday with Matt Core, who runs a site called Control Paint, and it's all about digital painting. And Matt and I, we're really very aligned in our value sets and our paradigms about online art education. And he was talking about how, yes, people in the most utilitarian mechanical sense, they come to his site to learn how to do digital painting, and even more specifically than that, digital painting in Photoshop. Like that is the mechanical takeaway. However, what he's constantly trying to do is get them, and I do the same thing, which is get them to try and think about the images that they're making and the stories that they're telling and the why behind all of this. And he was saying that part of the problem is the search-based path, the what you arrive at his site because you're looking, you already have it in your mind, you already quote unquote know what you want. And we were talking about, or you think you know what you're looking for, and we were talking about how he and I both went to a more traditional brick and mortar art school, and how there's something accidental about physical art school where you're bumping into fashion designers and photographers and writers and all these other kinds. They're all creative, and so you're unified in that way, but they all think way differently than you do. And thusly, your art there's not as much fan kind of mindset. There's not as much fanboy mindset mixed in to your artistic paradigm. It's more, we're all here for the pure essence of art. That's what we're all looking for. And now it seems like more of in this kind of search-based culture, and this very, you know, to be a professional artist means I'm an aspiring concept artist. Like it's that specific. The people who are really have sort of the storytelling fire in their hearts, they almost have to back into meaning and back into storytelling instead. Now it's like I'm trying to figure out how to do a certain technique or affect how do I make a, you know, metal shine in Photoshop or whatever, and it doesn't that's so not the point. Like nobody cares really.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, and again, it comes back to that thing where it's so much, that's the easier thing to do, right, is to learn to get better. And I'm guilty of this, you know,
sure, like, yeah, we all are, we're human.
I know I spend a lot of time trying to improve my kind of After Effects skills,
right? Yep.
Far more than I need to, and what I should be doing is using that energy to do the more meaningful stuff, the more difficult, the more scary stuff.
Yeah.
But it's much easier to say, "Oh, I'll just try and make my graphics look better." And I think it's interesting. That's how the audience perceives it as well. I think it's. I don't know if you. I'm sure you've read Scott McCloud's book about comics.
Oh yeah.
Which is. I'm not a comic person at all, but I think it's, for me, one of the really enlightening books I've read in the last couple of years. I discovered it quite late, but he has this great bit in it when he sort of talks about the 6 stages of the creative process as bits of an apple, and how it is easy. It's very tempting just to sort of polish the skin of the apple and make that as shiny as possible, but you can't really hide an apple that's got no core or no flesh. It's still going to taste bad. And what we should be doing is working on the core, on making something that matters. And then it doesn't matter whether it shines. I mean,
right.
The sort of the Dell video essays, for example, that I've done so far are not by any standard good. They're not pretty particularly. They're not perfectly animated or anything like that, or aesthetically pleasing necessarily. But I hope maybe the message gets through, because there is a message from the bottom. I prefer that than being able to make perfect, animations that don't really say anything. I guess what I'm saying is that I think it feels like there are far too many people telling us how to be a better shooter or a better editor or a better, this, that, or the other, and not enough people trying to tell us or helping us figure out something to say.
Right. Bob Dylan.
Oh, really? I'm not a Bob Dylan person.
Oh, man.
Am I missing a great reference?
He is exhibit A in the case for it doesn't matter if you're actually kind of crappy. If there's profound meaning in the work, and that meaning is communicated, the abstract, the purity, the essence of that meaning is actually successfully communicated, and that emotional change affected in your audience. And he is Bob Dylan. He always sings off key. His guitar is always out of tune. He plays the harmonica with such reckless abandon, and he's terrible. He's just, on a purely aesthetic. Well, no, that's not true. On an aesthetic level, lots of people, including me, like that aesthetic. But from a classical kind of formal perspective, he's awful. He's a terrible musician, but one of the best lyricists in the history of music. And it's not just the lyrics, it's the lyrics, and the aesthetic is part of the communication. I mean, the aesthetic is inextricable, but it matters in a way unlike the vast majority of music.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And it makes you see that everything we do, they're just tools to convey, they're just channels through which we can convey something more meaningful.
Right. Which, getting back to what you were saying about this sort of the initial problems that you were thinking of with Delve, you were trying to look at ways to communicate information that is in an interesting way. And I think that's definitely true. And you've most certainly succeeded at that. But the thing that really, really rocked my world when seeing the videos was the fact that there is profound meaning in the videos, and there's profound meaning about what it means to be a human and what it means to be an artist, and specifically an artist now. It's so honest, and but it's not just honest like, hey, doesn't it suck that everyone's in such a hurry? Doesn't it suck that everyone's so obsessed with youth? There's hope in it. And this gets back to the whole, you were talking about being kind of inexplicably drawn to history, and I am as well. And I often ask why, not that I'm literally trying to answer that question, but because I'm fascinated, because I think it says something about us as humans. And I think part of that is to be entirely fixated on the future or entirely fixated on the past. You stop fixing things. You stop improving life, or rather, you can be so focused on improving that that your present life suffers. So that's like this sort of like extreme entrepreneur. It's, you can get so future focused and so visionary that you're current relationships and your family and your marriage and whatever just completely falls apart. Or you can be so fixated on the past that you don't plan for the future. You don't think about, all you're focused on is, abiding, the survival. And so it's this balance. And I think that the stories from history keep us in that space because they're warnings and they're inspiration and they're proof. And anyway, I'm about to trail off into complete meaninglessness.
No, actually you in terms of asking, what are the things that led me to getting Delve off the ground? I think one of the changes that happened from that first idea in 2008 was also struggling to see why would anyone care about a documentary about, I don't know, World War One, or why would anyone give a crap about something or other?
Why do we need another one?
Why do we need another one? And again, it took me a long time to see that, but the answer came again only last year, completely by accident. I stumbled upon an old documentary series from the 1970s that the BBC made called Connections. And I think it was published or broadcast on PBS shortly afterwards. And I think it was one of the most popular documentaries on American television for a while, and led apparently to the Cosmos and the things that did all that great stuff. But it was basically a 10-part documentary series presented by this historian who was sort of wandering around the world in big flares and collars, as they did in those days. And it was called Connections because he was showing very clear, he would sort of start in the Bronze Age and show how the invention of one thing led to the invention of another, which led to the invention of another and another and another, until suddenly we have space travel. And sort of showing how all these events throughout history are connected. They have, it's not just, I think that's one of the problems with how we teach history, is we sort of teach it as a series of isolated incidents that have no meaning outside of what they are. And so I realized that that's something that I would do history if I could show how relevant it is to our lives today. And it's not, and so that directs it in the sense, like, I'm not ever trying to do an episode about a particular historical event. I think there'll more be about, here's a big idea that's important to us today. Where did it come from? Or how do we get here? Or here's, and so it also means that each episode can fly back and forward to time more freely as well. Right. So I think, these two essays, I think, obviously had their time in the Renaissance, but also flew ahead to the 19th century and today. And the one I'm working on now is mostly about something that happened in the 1940s, but also starts in ancient Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago and sort of goes back and forward like that. So, it's trying to show that all these things are connected and relevant. And I think you're right. History can obviously, the cliche that history can be a warning, but I think also learning about people who've led great lives. Exactly. Yeah. Is hugely inspiring. I love reading biographies of amazing people. I think heroes. Exactly. I think it could also help us understand where trends or where words or where, even little trivia, things like that come from. I think I've forgotten it now, but I wrote a list when this idea came to me last year of 16 ways that history can be awesome and interesting. Wow. And it includes, inspiring and a warning, but 14 other things that I can't remember off the top of my head, unfortunately, but that's what I'm trying to aim for a little bit.
Where did the Da Vinci idea come from, and why did that seem like the flagship?
Because it had been sort of percolating for about 6 months in my head. I'd written a couple of mini blog posts about it on Medium, I think. It just starts off as this nascent idea that things are supposed to be difficult. That's what makes them important or meaningful. And that maybe me personally feeling that I'd lost my tolerance for things being difficult. And the way I found that I was flitting from project to project and stopping when it started to get really difficult. And asking myself that hard question of why am I doing that? And what's wrong with me, if you like, or, why am I so scared of things being difficult? And then I read Mastery by Robert Greene, which is all about how it was, again, stories, really relevant stories from all over history of people who have achieved what he would sort of define as mastery in whatever sort of field they're in,
right.
and looking at what was their journey to do that, and looking for the connections and the patterns. And a lot of it is, sort of an early apprenticeship in or an interest in a topic, and then lots of years of repetitive practice. And I think one of the things I realize is there's always this bit that's missing from when we tell the story of how we got somewhere or how we achieved something. When you look back through time, it always seems like it was a very straight line. Like you started at A and you ended up at Z, and you just went through the steps. And it kind of misses the point that actually when you're at step A, there's no straight line. The line hasn't been written yet, and there are a million different paths you could take. And I think, as I realized myself at the start of this interview, I was in danger of giving you a very simplified version of how I quit my job and started this journey. And actually the truth was that it was a lot more messy and chaotic and confusing. And I think as well, I think when we look at all these great achievers and great masters at whatever it is that they do, particularly in creative fields, but also in things like sport, we forget, no one sees or ever hears about the hours upon hours that David Beckham would have spent kicking penalties on a really cold, rainy Tuesday night in December. He's there on his own on a pitch kicking balls into a net over and over and over and over again, for hours and hours and hours. That is how you get good at something. You just do it over and over and over again. Right. And I don't think there's any, it doesn't feel like that's communicated to us much anymore, that there's got to be a bit where you have to sit down and you've got to put the hours in over and it takes years. Yeah. And I'm realizing this with reading, for example. As I said earlier, I really want to read more. I want to learn more, and I can try and do all sorts of productivity exercises and download apps and do all sorts of things. But eventually, I'm gonna have to sit down on my own and read a damn book, for 2 hours a day in silence. Yeah. That's, there is no escaping that. Yeah. You want to read, you've got to read books, and you've got to spend hours doing it.
Simple. It's
so simple, but simple is never easy. Yeah. Is the great lesson of it all, isn't it? But, I think with anything, I'm sure, and, you're an artist yourself, and you'll be able to, or you might not be able to count, the hours you would have spent mastering, the human figure. Even just trying to get the proportions right, I imagine just takes, hundreds of hours. Yeah. And no one ever, people watch, an artist draw something and it just looks so easy. And I think we all cheat ourselves out of appreciating that there's lots of hours on your own in a room, just getting at it. And
that's the problem with public life being so public now. Exactly. Is that you can't, nothing is invisible, at least not, the people who are listening to this show and the people who are on social media that I'm interacting with, I'm sure there are plenty of people that are not online that are out there doing this, and they're surpassing us all probably because they're just doing the work. But those of us who are all kind of interacting here in this space, which is awesome, I'm certainly not villainizing the space in which I live and spend my time and energy. But the point is that we're all out here doing this stuff online, and you can say in your mind, okay, this is just a work in progress, or here's just some stuff from my sketchbook, I'm just sharing it, but then it doesn't get any likes, or someone gives you a harsh critique, and all of a sudden all the actual value of that thing just goes out the window. It doesn't, all of a sudden it's just, I'm a horrible artist, I'll never make it. And it's like, guys, this is the first time that this has ever been mixed together, that performance and practice is happening at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think, we are in a world where we are constantly able to, and therefore do, compare ourselves with everyone else. Right. So, you just go on Facebook and then suddenly you see that, I don't know, someone has bought a house, and you think, well, why haven't I bought a house yet? Or someone's got a new job and you think, well, maybe I should have gone down that career path and maybe I would have been offered that job. I thought all those things. And I think you're right. Like, that's new. Yeah. It also doesn't help that, that we forget that people always publish their best self on social media and never their worst. So you're always comparing yourself badly against the best of everyone else. Yeah. And I think we're becoming increasingly unhappy. Oh yeah. Because where, you'll never win when you compare yourself against
right. The curated version.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it is about, I think it goes very wide. I think it probably affects romance and relationships as well. I don't think we've ever been in a time in history when, you can be in a really great relationship, but every day you're bombarded with images of more attractive or more successful people. And you always think, well, maybe I could do better. I don't know. I think that's a new thing and not necessarily a good one.
One thing I have done is embraced the responsibility of the visual storyteller and taken responsibility for the fact that I have a platform. And, for example, that's why I wrote you. I do, if I'm honest, feel like these are the kinds of things that are the important pursuits that are, on my worst days, I get mad that more artists aren't thinking about this kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. You mean about the craft of it, or do you mean about the
happiness and the quality of life and the brevity of life? And artists are the conscience of the culture.
Absolutely.
What we're really doing, and as storytellers, and this gets back to that history thing and the Delph stuff and everything, it's like what we're really trying to do is ignite the conscience, and remind people keep the perspective correct and remind people of what's important, what's really important in the sort of like lasting, like you said, your legacy starts now in the legacy sense,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of it is about perspective, I think, and trying to maybe create for people a few minutes of reflection, maybe in an otherwise very busy and distracted day.
And this is the thing, because you're like the Da Vinci videos let people off the hook, which is great. I mean, it lets the artist who is toiling and feels ignored and anonymous and everything, it goes, guys, that's actually not the problem. The fact that you feel like right now you're anonymous and you're a failure and on, you got to think about the long game here. Your perspective needs to be extended, extrapolated, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, when I had the realization myself before I made the video that it was a long game, you're absolutely right. It was a huge relief for me, just as an artist, to say it's okay. You've still got another 20 years. Like you've got all the time. And certainly with this project, I'm very happy to just let it percolate and ferment, if you like, over time, and not in a rush for it to, be big or successful or anything. I think it's said it. I don't even know whether success by big numbers is even what matters. It is more about trying to, like we said, finding those people who get you and what you do and come back for more. You're
not making an information business.
No,
that's not your MO.
I think ultimately it is about that connection, isn't it? And that relationship. And, I think I'd rather have a smaller audience that I knew were impacted by what I did, rather than, I think that's one of the problems in publishing online, is that you never really have a way to measure the thing that matters.
Yeah, right.
So you have to measure the easy stuff, you have to measure views and actually the real question is, I mean, I did get an email from someone who said that they'd watched the video and it had made them at the age of 40 start writing a book that they'd been putting off for years. And I was like, right, great. That is it. I've made something as a human being that has made another human being start a big project.
Right. Yeah, something that matters.
Yeah, and I think that's worth 1 million views, that kind of real impact. And I think that's a shame that in online publishing and everything that we do online, that's the people are still celebrated for how many views they get or how many listeners or readers or fans or whatever they have, rather than whether or not they're doing something that matters or they're having an impact.
Do you think about monetization, for a lack of a better word? I mean, do you kind of just dismiss that and just go, I'm going to make the thing and come what may?
It's probably somewhere in between the two, in the sense that for a long time, one of the other things that delayed the project for me for a long time was the fact that I felt I needed to have a business plan or something
right.
for it before
Yeah.
I started it, which is the wrong way to go about it, I think. And I think, as I say, I've got a lot to figure out about how to publish the videos in the right way. And at the moment, all my energy is really on making the videos good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there may be a point when I have to start collaborating and building, working with other people to start doing the things that I can't do. I think I would love it to make money one day, but I think I've always been quite snobbish about advertising, for example.
Me too. Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm not I think it's relying apart from anything else, relying too much on other people to do things. I mean, so far it has 3 people have left a tip on Vimeo, on the Vimeo tip jar.
Oh,
so I've made a grand total of $21. Although awesome. Actually, I'm like, that is the first time in my 10 years of making videos, that is the first time someone has given me money directly for a video, and that I've wanted to make, rather than being, doing client work. So for me, that was those $21 are quite special for me. I think there is, I think there's probably potential with some really good, meaningful collaborations with, educators or universities or museums to try and unlock some of the knowledge that they have in their archives or in their, on their books, if you like, and working with people who know things to help unlock their knowledge. Yeah. Rather than me trying to learn something and then trying to share it with other people. Sure. Yeah. So I think there's that type of potential. But I think at the moment I'm happy to try and find that it's hard actually to have that balance between doing, trying to make this project as good as it can be, and then also trying to do client work. So I'm sort of juggling the next video essay and 2 films actually for 2 different clients at the moment, which I guess isn't ideal, but it also affords me the freedom as well to live in Paris and and sort of be more free in my day-to-day creativity. So that's fine for now. So the honest answer is I don't know yet, but I do think, and I don't know, maybe it's naive, I don't know, but I do think it has to start with making something that people love and making something really good. Yeah, it's that connections between people, and then they find meaning in it, and then they will just help you. People will help you, like collaborators will just appear. They will just gravitate toward the project because it is important in sort of an intangible cosmic sense. I think there is still huge problems that needs to be fixed about how to make paying for things easier. I think supporting good art is still very difficult online. Because there's no urgency. There's no sense of like, I need this, Yeah. And I think it is difficult. It's still about logging into different accounts. And I think eventually someone will figure out a much easier one-click sort of way to support something, in the same way you can just double tap an Instagram video and like it. That might become easier. But I think just in terms of money, if you try and base it from a financial perspective about if you make that a priority, I think that just eventually at some point down the line will mean you'll make a decision based on the wrong thing at some point. Right. You'll make a decision because that will bring in more money or more revenue or more subscribers. And it won't be the decision that is, to make what you do better or to make your impact greater. Yeah. I think that's a difficult line to tread, but ideally that's how I'd like to form my decisions, I suppose. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great. Let me ask you one very result-based question, which is, how did you go about getting permission for example, the Craig Ferguson footage? So most of the footage is in the public domain that you see on there. Lots of it from the Prelinger archives and from what other ones did I include in there? I think most of the videos is from that. With Craig Ferguson, it was more of a case of ask for forgiveness later on. I give him, obviously. Give him a copyright thing at the end. Not that that's particularly meaningful, but it was one of those things where I did. When I was making the videos, it was part of the thought process. It was like, actually, it's not ideal. It's not how I like to do things, but I figured it was, in the end, I made a decision that it was justifiable. It was the way he said it was good enough or important enough to make the point that he kind of had to be in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of uncertainty for a long time, because I was also thinking, why on earth am I using a game show host to try and make a point? Sorry, a TV show host to try and make a point about creativity and all this type of thing. Like, that is a really random.
It's great
thing to try and do. So I actually my bigger worry was that people would think, why on earth is he using Crate? What an idiot. That doesn't make any sense at all. So it's one of those things where, I don't know, who knows, CBS might turn around one day and say, I'd like to try and argue that it's not making any money and it's for the greater education and good, but they'd have their right. They'd have their right to. I have a sort of other version that has that taken out if I needed to do a swap and change,
where you just like quote him or something.
Yeah. So I think it's looking forward. I don't do that. I try not to do that at all. Sometimes I think it's one of those, I think you just have to make a judgment call, don't you, about whether something's valid or not. And I think I think there's different, I personally think that art should be remixed and should be, I have a problem with people who sort of just host shows and then make money off the ad revenue on YouTube. But I think, what is the point of something if it can't be if it makes a connection, if it can't be built upon and be shared and things.
Exactly.
But of course, lawyers see it very differently. So
totally. Okay, so any closing thoughts, and then please tell the listeners how they can find and interact with you online.
Sure. Closing thoughts. I don't know, actually. I feel like we've covered a huge amount of ground, haven't we, in the last couple of hours. It's been great. In terms of the projects that I'm doing, my own sort of for me personally, my website is just my name, adamwestbrook.co.uk. Just is the easiest way to get in touch with me. And then Delve is in a couple of places, but it's all mostly centered around the website, which is delve.tv. And that's where all the videos are, and all the Instagram videos, and a little summary about the project.
Well, Adam, this has been beyond inspiring, so I just can't thank you enough for being on the show.
No, thank you very much for having me. I've also found it hugely a really fulfilling conversation, actually. So thank you very much.
Adam and I talked about being a lifetime learner and the importance of reading. What was the best book you read in 2014? And what effect did it have on your life? Let's all go to chrisoatley.com/delve2, that's DELVE and the number 2, and post our answers in the comments. My favorite book of 2014 was definitely Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Because I think this'll be fun, I'll save my review for the comments section. Community activities like this get more awesome the more people who participate, so please drop by, again, chrisoatley.com/delve2. Share a book recommendation, and then take a trip to the library. And be sure to join us for the next episode of Chris Oatley's ArtCast, where you'll meet my good friend Jen Ely and hear about her journey to Leica. You might know my friend Justin Copeland from my other podcast, The Paper Wings Show. Justin is a story artist at Marvel Animation, and he teaches films on paper, which is our storyboard course here at the Oatley Academy. Today, I would like to introduce you to two of Justin's amazing students. Jessica Dahl and Reggie Rock enrolled in the very first offering of Films on Paper, and they're here to share some of the recent insights they've had about the power of visual storytelling. Films on Paper opens for auditions in January of 2015. If you're interested, you can go to chrisoatley.com/delve2. That's right, you guessed it. And you can sign up for the early notification list. Just look for the link about 3/4 of the way down the post, and you'll be among the first to receive one single email notification when the course opens for auditions. Okay, that was a lot of information, I know. Thank you for listening and for your patience. Now here's Jessica Dahl and Reggie Rock. welcome to Chris Oatley's ArtCast, my friends.
Thanks for having us.
Hello.
Let's start with Jessica. Jessica, give us an idea of who you are and how you found yourself at the Oatley Academy.
I went to art school for a degree in 2D animation. Kind of the same thing where I really wanted to be a 2D character animator and really wanted to work for Disney. And then as I was there, I think, Princess and the Frog came out, and then that was one of the last, at least for Disney, that was one of the last 2D features to come out. So I was like, okay, well, what can I do now? Once I graduated, I was going to start applying to different studios, but then we had a family thing come up, and it required for me to stay at home. Then my friend called me from my school, and he was a film major, and he was like, hey, you want to start an animation studio? And I was like, okay, that sounds great. Pick
up where Disney left off.
Yeah, exactly. So for about 2 years, well, 3 years now, but for about 2 years, I was a 2D character animator. Our team grew a little bit. We're making a lot of cool animations, and it was a dream come true. I don't know how I lucked into that one. I'm very grateful. I loved my job and I loved the people that I worked with, but there was just some itch that wasn't being scratched, and I wasn't sure what it was. Like when you graduate from college, the journey is not over. You have to keep on learning. And Chris, you said something about going to CTN, and I was like, CTN, what's that? And I looked it up, and that looked fantastic. And I knew I needed to go. I immediately signed up, and it was like, this is an investment I really want to make. Got to CTN, and I had the pleasure of being able to talk with you, Chris, and talk about your courses. Painting drama sounded really cool. But you were telling me about this class, Films on Paper. And it was all about storytelling. And I swear, like, when you said the word storytelling, like something like pinged in the back of my mind. Yeah. And I was like, storytelling. I had this gut feeling, and I signed up for it, and I was very honored to be accepted into it. And it turned out like that was easily the best decision I have made to apply for that course. Just it turns out that itch that wasn't being scratched was storytelling. Yeah. Since then, just all of these things have opened up for me this year. I never thought that any of this would be possible. It's been pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk a little bit more about Films on Paper in just a minute. But Reggie, if you could respond to the same question.
All right, cool. I guess we'll talk about art school. Went to AI, Art Institute, Orange County, and graduated 2007 under the Media Arts and Animation program. Yeah, that was that, graduating, and got this demo reel and got a portfolio, and I'm, trying to get a job, and I didn't get a job, didn't get the thing that I was, thinking or hoping for. And at that point, I decided to really look back at why I wanted to do this in the first place. What was it that I was drawing for? Why did I want to do this? And I was like, I really want to tell stories. And so I started thinking of a project that I wanted to do for myself. So I started this comic. I started going to a new school. I started taking some courses in English and Japanese. I always had an inspiration for going to Japan, and so I wanted to work on my Japanese. I've always been trying to learn this language, and so I took some classes there, and I had an opportunity to go to Japan to do some English teaching, and wow. Very awesome opportunity. Met a lot of good people, a lot of good friends, but I still was working on this comic project, still working on this thing that's so deep in my heart. And I had finished a big chunk of it, and I showed my friend Tong Bui.
Oh,
yeah, good old
my
Tong.
God, he is the best.
Yeah, no, Tong's crazy. Tong is awesome. We went to school together. I showed it to him, and he was like, dude, this is good, but it's, kind of lacking here, lacking there. And that really, to tell you the truth, it really hurt. I was like, oh God, it's so hard on this, And he was like, hey, have you ever heard of Paper Wings? I was like, dude, no, I don't know what that is. And that's where I got introduced to you and Laura. Cool. And I started listening to those. I was like, oh my God, this is what I needed. This is so juicy, so good. And from then on, listening to the cast, just all the information that you were giving out and the guests that were coming on, it was great. And hearing about Films on Paper, I was like, you know what? Let me do this. Let me jump on this. Got into the class, and that's what's up right now.
You specifically mentioned, Jessica, that there was this itch that wasn't being scratched. It's not that you hadn't heard the word storytelling before. When you heard that word at that time, something clicked. Mm-hmm. What do you think that is? What's going on there?
I think for myself personally, what it was, and this has been my own journey that, that I've been trying to get through, is that when I was a kid, and especially in high school, when I was taking those art classes, I was fully free to express myself the way I wanted to express myself while learning fundamentals and things like that. When I got to college, and again, like I had a really great college experience, and I wouldn't trade that in for anything. But it all came down to like, what job are you going to get? How do you define yourself as a job? And then, again, 2D character animation, unless I wanted to move to Canada or Denmark or something like that, it bottomed out. And at that point, I was like, well, I don't know. Let me try on these different hats and see if any of them fit. And then when I got home, like I said, we had a big family thing hit where I kind of needed to change my role to more of a caretaker role. And what ended up happening was that I pushed a lot of myself to the side during those years, which it's really important to be there for other people.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like extremely important. But it's also really important in that process that you don't lose sight of who you are and that you don't push all of your interests to either the back burner or just away. And I think what ended up happening was that during those years, I got really unfocused because it turns out that like the more I think back on it, all the work that I used to do just on my own, they were all story based. And I was even, I remember I was storyboarding stuff in high school and I didn't really know what a storyboard artist was at the time, but I was doing that stuff just naturally. So when you said storytelling, it was just like this past part of myself that felt like it almost felt like a missing part of myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was just kind of like, oh man, I really want to get back into that. And one of my best friend and I were working on a comic together, and even my company, we've had actually, thanks to Films on Paper, we've had long talks about the direction of our company, and we all agree that we want to get into more narrative stuff here.
Awesome.
So it's just like it's affected all these portions of my life that I never expected. Basically, it's important to be true to yourself and to really get down to the core of what's important to you, because if it's important to you, then it's kind of like the truth of who you are.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we all have our journeys, and they're all interconnected in that way. We have to be true to ourselves to be able to be true to other people.
So what you're saying, even with going back to 2D character animation, you were always on this journey, right? You were always seeking this sort of the power of storytelling manifest in your work. That was always the journey for you. Yeah,
like I was looking back at some of my old stuff, and each time, like with the character performance, I was wondering, like, okay, who are they talking to? What just happened? How are they going to communicate with their body language and things like that? And it was just like, it never occurred to me before. It never occurred to me that it was storytelling. I thought it was just acting, which it is, but acting is a part of storytelling. So again, it's like I got down more to the further down to the core of what it was. So
wow, that is awesome. Reggie, what's the point? What's the point of pursuing the power of storytelling, in your opinion?
Let's see. How do I? It seems such like a huge question that will change the answer every year.
The journey.
We're trying to connect to each other. Humans connecting to other humans. I think that's the heart of the whole thing. I think it's just something we want to do as humans. And just for me, I would like to visually do that through drawings or through film or through pictures. And I was watching some show last night, the chef, what is it? Something about the mind of a chef, and, this guy is just I forget, I think his name is David. He's just an awesome chef. The way this guy treats his food or making the food is, I guess he's doing it for himself as an enjoyment, but, he's preparing these foods or these awesome things so other people can enjoy, and there's the connection right there. Boom.
Something that I love about the both of you is that you're such big feelers. You guys feel the full dynamic range, and you're not intimidated by or afraid to feel all of the emotions, but you're not, that's not purely internal. You're so open and receptive to people and kind of just from wherever they are on the emotional spectrum at any given moment. But what's interesting to me is that, for example, you, Jessica, being fascinated with a more technical, almost cinematic kind of approach, like a filmmaker's approach, whereas Reggie, you seem to me to be drawn more to movement and character. And there's the only word I can think of is visceral, this like visceral quality. Do you think about that? Are there influences? Is that something that just happened and then you went, oh, I guess that's how I draw? I mean, how did you evolve as an artist in this way? And anyway, I'm not asking a clear question, but I'm just interested in hearing your response to that.
Yeah, no.
Your response to my response to your work, as if we can get any more strange than that.
No, you're good. And first, too, thank you so much about the feeling. That was just all such big compliments, and I really appreciate it all. And my goodness gracious.
Oh, well. Telling it like it is.
Oh, gosh, I'm not entirely sure where to start. I've always been fascinated by the psychology of camera angles, and I'm trying to learn more about just overall composition now and just get better with that. But like I remember back in school, like we had a class on camera angles and things like that, and it blew my mind. And honestly, I watched a ton of TV and movies as a kid, and I especially loved Dragon Ball Z. Actually, that was one of my favorites. I don't know what sparked it or what, but before I would go to bed at night, I'd be like, I want to make my own movie of Dragon Ball Z. So I'd think about, I'd make it in my head and I'd focus on camera angles. I think it's one of those things that's always been kind of innate, and it's just the way that I see things. And maybe the fact that I watched a lot of TV really probably influenced that a bit. I tend to be pretty analytical with my work. I usually write out everything that I want to do first and then do a really rough thumbnail by it. Like I figure out what the main general goal of a thing is, and then I narrow it all down to okay, what's the general goal of this video? Now what's the general goal of this sequence? What's the general goal of this performance right here? So I tend to just overanalyze, really. Yeah. So it becomes technical in that way, and I'm trying to work on being a bit looser, but at the same time, I really for myself, I get my best work when I overthink things because and then revisit it later, especially.
Right.
Yeah, because then I'm like, ooh, now it's time to edit, and that's one of the best things ever.
Yes.
Right.
So is that ever a struggle trying to inject that emotion back into it after you've taken this very analytical approach, or does that come naturally because you're just now you're responding to it in a way almost as if some other artist had drawn it? Yeah,
it's a bit of both, actually. I try to read through it just how if I was like an outside person looking in, and how I'm responding to it and reacting to it internally and externally, like if I laugh. After that, then I look through it and I'm like, okay, could I put a beat in here somewhere? Maybe I have too many camera angles. That's my problem usually is I put too much, and so I have to take stuff out. And I analytically look through and see, okay, where do I need to simplify and emphasize the humanity a bit more, like character performance and subtlety? And are they doing too much? Is this actually true to them? Because that's not fair to them. If I'm making them do something that they wouldn't do, that's not cool.
That's great.
Right. Well, it's like they become their own people. And when I say become, it's just like the more you put in there, then you see them react more and more. And it's more that you realize that they're their own person or character just from the get-go.
How about you, Reggie? Thinker, feeler.
Here, I'm standing up. Let me sit down. Let me calm down real quick. let me calm down real quick. Okay.
Oh my God.
Let's try to think. I'm going to try to, again, these answers are all changeable. Next year I might say something else or, whatever. But I think what I'm trying to do is, again, back to the core, this connection thing. We're talking about connection. That's this right. Human connection. I'm trying to touch people with the work. My hand is going through the pages or whatever it is, trying to touch them. And I guess if either that touch, this is the core of, I guess, I want to say the soul of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And then with that touch, you know, I'm trying to figure out, should I be shaking this person? Is this just a light tap? Is this me just hovering my hand over the person's shoulder?
Right.
What I've been finding myself doing is, you know, just making sure I'm trying to say the right thing with the work, you know, applying details, less detail, cameras, you know, drawing these backgrounds or whatever. Is the perspective right? You know, because if this perspective's not right, people feel weird, or do I want them to feel weird, or, you know, or does it just look sloppy? You know, you get all this stuff, you know, that comes at you. And then too, now what I'm doing is, you know, I used to be like, yo, I'm Mr. Lone Ranger. I want to be the Mr. Cool guy. I want people to say, hey, you know, Reggie's awesome. He does great work and stuff like that. But that's a very dangerous way of thinking, you know, for myself.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, very dangerous, you know, and no more of this Lone Ranger crap. It's cool in the movies sometimes, but in reality, yo, you need family, you need friends. Yo, we're in this together. And so like I'm starting to shoot this work to my friends. You know, I guess the whole thing is like, oh man, I don't want, you know, I've been working on this for 10 hours, 12 hours or whatever, 5 hours. I don't want them to say, hey, you failed.
Wow.
And start all over again. But sometimes it's like, hey, let's test it out. That is the life part. Is this going to work? You know what? Let's be bold. Let's go test it out. Let me show this to my friend. Let me go show this to somebody who is not like an artist. Let me show this to this person, that person. Let's see if it works. Let's see if this magic that I've been working on, let's see if it works. And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does. But if it doesn't, it's like, okay, cool. It's time to go back to work. It's time to go back. And I think a lot of times you just have to be open to it. Sometimes they have it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have a piece.
Honesty in the purest possible sense, like holistic honesty, is always your true north.
Right.
Amen to that.
In all of the different things to think about, that is really the thing that you Reggie have identified as being, regardless of how difficult an assignment is or how abstract and frustrating a story development process might be, all things considered, this still the most pure honesty is the true north.
Right.
When Justin and I started designing films on paper, we knew one thing for sure, and that is we didn't want to have a course that was just purely about storyboarding. And so there are a couple things that we throw around a lot where we say, Justin will help to get you thinking like a director. You know, that's one big takeaway from the course, or at least that's the goal anyway. Another thing we say is that to be a professional concept artist, and I would add to that, to remain a professional concept artist, or storyboard artist, either it's true for either role. You need an endless supply of surprising new ideas. No pressure, right?
No pressure, none at all.
And so there's this question, well, where do you get an endless supply of surprising new ideas? And obviously there are a lot of places, you know, from which surprising new ideas come. But one area and an area that I think is overlooked all too often is history. What has come before. And I feel like filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers, pre-professional filmmakers, professional filmmakers, and seasoned Jedi Master, you know, Spielberg level pros, they all should be doing the same thing, and that is looking to history and trusting themselves, trusting their own visceral responses to greatness, the greatness that has come before. So these are the two kind of main ideas that when those two ideas came together, the idea of the endless supply of surprising new ideas and the we want it to be more than just a mechanics of storyboarding kind of course. When we had those two things, that's when we went, all right, now we're on to something. You know, we had our true north for designing films on paper. That said, one, did that happen? Did we achieve our goal? And two, what else did it become in Justin's leadership in the community that formed in that first generation of students of which you guys were a significant part. What else did it become? Well, did we do our job, and what else did it become?
Yes. Number one, yes. YES, yes, it worked. You guys, what you guys planned to put together, the heart of it, and literally, yes, it did happen. And for number two, what did we get out? Because I'm going to kind of mix number one with number two, because that was what was going on. What I really liked about the class. Well, first of all, just getting into the class, getting into the audition process. The audition, that already right there kind of set you up. Like, okay, if you really want to do this, like, why? Yeah. Like we're saying it to you guys, but we're also saying it to ourselves. Like, do we really have a reason to really do this? And if we do this, are we going to go all in? Are you ready for correction? What is it that you want to accomplish? These kind of things. These are very important things. Yeah. This is such a great opportunity to be in a place with all these different people going after this same goal. So, right there, it's like, you guys set it up so that it's already going to be a success before it started. And then we get in there and it's more than you expect, Yes, we're learning storytelling and learning it through films and learning it through images, concept artwork, paintings, things of the old, just history, just life in itself, your own life. Again, it wasn't like, hey, Justin's like, okay, I'm going to come in and like, hey, you guys are going to do this. And that's it. He's like, it wasn't that. There's a plan and there's a goal that he has. But again, he's extracting the greatness out of us because we're all so different. We're different ages. We come from different backgrounds and we kind of have different goals in storytelling. So everybody can get some greatness from it. And nobody's like, I don't even know how you guys do this. I really think it has to just do with heart to heart. It's just real heart energy. That's what I would say. And because we're getting core fundamentals, we're learning things, a lot of stuff that maybe we heard back in school, or if we had classes or not, we're revisiting them again. It's kind of like going back over your fundamentals of drawing, and you're like, oh yeah, that's why we do this. That's why that happened. But at the same time, you're learning new things. Oh, I didn't see it that way. Justin may show us something and point out something that says, oh, wow, now I see how this director is speaking with these camera shots or these colors or these kind of things or these shapes. And somebody can chime in and it'll change, not that it would change the course, but if we need to go in on this and it's going to help all of us we'll go in and do that. We'll take the time to do that. Or somebody could say this and somebody could say that, and it'll bring a life into like an unexpected, like added energy to the whole class. And it's like, oh, wow. We all learned something. Even Justin's like, oh, wow. Like, I didn't see that. Like, and so it's everybody's growing, everybody's learning. We have a great leader that's helping us, but it's like, we also have a voice too. And, everybody matters. And I think that was just a so beautiful thing. And then as well as, there's still, after class is over, class is not even over. We're still talking about stuff throughout the week, like Justin, he's like the father, he'll be like, yo, guys, check this out. Oh, I found this online, or check this out, or he'll go in and look at our assignments. Oh, but look at that, and then we're doing that to each other. And it's just like a happy family. And I don't want to make this sound like all cheesy. Like, okay, let's say it's like a happy army. We're like an army of storytellers, like ready to just go out there and do this thing, and just learn, because we just keep learning stuff and keep learning and keep growing. And like, again, like it's like, I don't know what, 6 months out, we're still learning, everybody's still coming in, Leah, Kay, everybody in the family. I don't want to say everybody's name, but it's a beautiful thing. And like, so Chris, you and Justin, what you guys set up, and then just with the Ole Academy, because I'm learning other people from the other classes. And I'm just like, oh, this is such a beautiful picture. This picture is so big and so beautiful. I don't even think we know the what's
like the ramifications, maybe, or
like it's so big and massive that, oh man. And I mean, it's just really changed me. Because one of my problems was like, I was just very introvert, really, again, Lone Ranger, quiet, kind of, lacking in confidence and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not afraid to say it because I'm human, because we're all human. But, there's different things I was dealing with. And like Justin, I mean, for somebody, my instructor, to actually, I can able to talk to him, and he said he can see what I'm going through, and for him to uplift me and say I can do this, and for Chris to there's that connection thing. That's just changed the whole game.
Yeah.
And it's just so beautiful, and just so many people, everybody's just so beautiful. And just, So, I'm going to calm down because I'm getting all hyped right now.
That's great. I love it, man. That's what we're all about. There's no way I can even begin to try and explain the awesome energy and creativity and the awesome amount of love that that is in this place called the Oatly Academy. And it's incredible to me. We're so fortunate to have so many amazing people that are just so passionate, and to be at CTNX and to look back on that, on those years leading up to this most recent CTNX is an amazing thing, because I feel like we're a school.
Right.
It's always the potential for this, I guess, was always there, but to really see it happening, like, this is a thriving community now. And that is the most rewarding, probably, I think by far the most rewarding experience I've ever had in my life, was that feeling of, wow, it really is an academy now. It's and it has the mixture of all these great people and just surprising people. I can't picture my life without Jessica Dahl and Reggie Rock. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like, you're amazing and you're here. It's just so, it's the greatest thing ever.
I don't want to imagine life without Oatly Academy. I just don't know where I would be at this point. Like, and it's been a year, and it feels like just so much has changed for the better. It's spectacular, actually. It's, oh man, I don't even know. It's oh my gosh, it's so great. I can't.
Exactly.
We were talking about something specific there, and I'm gonna try and right. we got at the Love Fest, and that's awesome. I love that.
Love you guys.
We love you too.
Jessica, you I'd love to still get your take on Films on Paper specifically.
It's almost like Films on Paper gave us permission to be the artists and storytellers that we were meant to be, as kind of cheesy as that sounds.
No,
that is not cheesy. That's it.
What the course ended up doing for me, which was huge, was it took out this perfectionist mindset that had gotten into my head, that I had to be like this perfect artist, that like I had to get to the point where I didn't need to grow anymore to get the studio job, to make the money. Right. It is a technical course. You learn techniques and things like that in there, sure, but it was all about opening yourself up to the world around you. You open yourself up, and that's one person opening up, and now throw 20 more people on top of that, and how you react to those 20 people. It was just absolutely incredible. There's something with visual storytelling, just in it's just what you said, just in the idea that you can open up people to fully immerse people into an experience that they never otherwise would have been able to experience.
Right.
You learn things about yourself that maybe you never otherwise would have, or experience things you never thought you would, and it's incredible.
Let us know where we can find you online, and if people want to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
If you would like to find my work, you can find it at www.jessdoll.com, and that's JESSDOLL. And then if you'd like to check out the comic I'm making with my friend, her name is Michelle Tolley, by the way. She's a fantastic writer. I love her work.
Cool.
I'm so excited. I feel really lucky to be able to draw her story.
Oh, that's awesome.
But you'll be able to find that early January at www.pinion-comic.com. I'm on Tumblr a lot, and it is Lotus Ninja 24 .tumblr.com. So.
Ooh.
How about you, Reggie Rock?
My personal art website is rockmo.com, which is ROK-MO.com. And on that site, you'll find other links to like, the Tumblr, the Facebook, all this other stuff where I'm at. Twitter, my Twitter, name or thing is at, this one's a little different than the website. So it's at Rockmo, but it's at R0K M0.
It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you both.
Likewise. Thank you again for having us.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. So cool.
Yeah.
This podcast is a production of the Oatley Academy of Concept Art, Illustration, and Visual Storytelling. I'm Chris Oatley, your host and producer. Our editor is Kevin Chandler. Production support was provided by Travis Bond and Anya Marcos. Our theme music is provided by Storybook Steve. Recurring musical segments are provided by Storybook Steve and Kangaralian. We are a proud member of the Visual Voice Podcasting Network, and you can find all of our available shows at chrisoatley.com/shows.
And sorry, I just got overwhelmed with like, oh my god, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Can I try that again?
Yes, of course.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. Oh my god. Oh my goodness gracious.